The Mobile Testing and Experience Summit, MTES. I'm Kara Suarez, Head of Marketing at Kobiton. For this session, I have the opportunity to sit down with Nanda Kishore, Director of Program Management at Uber. The mobile testing industry highly regards Uber as a global leader in advanced mobile testing and delivery methodologies. Known for its rigorous practices in continuous integration and deployment, Uber delivers mobile excellence at a scale and complexity at the forefront of mobile innovation. Today, Nanda will help us understand Uber's journey to mobile excellence. So Nanda, tell us about your experience as a quality leader at Uber and your background.
Thank you so much for having me, Kara. I lead the quality org within Uber, and I'm part of a team called GSS. GSS stands for Global Scale Solutions. We are a product and tech arm, helping product and engineering teams scale programs and projects globally. So that's a quick intro about me. As far as Uber's mobile testing experience is concerned, Uber app in general, if you notice very closely, has a global footprint operating in 100 plus countries. We have a very, very agile release cycle, which means we ship close to 4 apps every week across operating system versions, mobile operating system versions. This in turn leads us to testing more than 40,000 test cases every week, not including any of the hot fixes or the ad hoc testing that we do, like performance testing, accessibility testing, integration testing, and so on, with the highest level of quality, right? So that's the big focus, while also not losing track of our efficiency by automating as many tests as possible. We work on test case optimization. We look to proactively shift our bug discovery to the left as much as possible. We tap into the social media channels to understand bug trends. So there's a lot of effort going on for the last few years. So that sort of explains the complexity with which the Uber app is rolled out globally into production environment. So that's been a phenomenal journey. We are kickstarting several programs and projects, right, to create excellent mobile experience. And what I mean by excellent mobile experience is we are trying to ensure that our app is absolutely magical to use. It's seamless, it's intuitive to use for everyone, everywhere. It's visually very appealing. It's super fast in terms of performance and has a smooth navigation. So this is what we call as the magical user experience for everyone, everywhere. That's a big pillar that we are trying to focus on as a quality function. And the thinking here is we are very clear in terms of our strategy, and we are looking to own the end-to-end user experience by seamlessly integrating performance, compatibility, accessibility, and usability as part of our core testing fundamentals. So I hope that gives you a background of how we approach mobile excellence in the context of Uber.
Yeah. I think something that is really striking is how having such a clear definition of mobile excellence has really shaped your mobile strategy. Do you know a little bit about how that definition came to evolve?
Absolutely. In fact, to give you quickly a bit of a background context, when we set up our mobile testing processes about eight years ago, Uber was a rapidly evolving organization. There is a natural bias to deliver and launch features from engineers and who are building these features, and to launch it as fast as possible. So naturally, the quality was taking a hit, because of which sometimes we ran into situations that there were global outages. There is friction in the experience. You're trying to open the Uber app to book a ride at a critical moment, and the app crashes, right? Or you're trying to select a product, select a screen, and you're unable to do it. You're in the midst of an emergency. You're trying to get to a location, and you're not able to do it. So while the feature exists, we've not been able to test it comprehensively. Another challenge back then was there was no dedicated testing team within Uber. And a lot of our initial test strategy was based on vendor outsourcing, a bit of onboard testing in the US, and that costed us quite a bit in terms of investment. So therefore, this whole pillar around creating magical user experience, making it seamless, sort of got evolved, and that's when we started setting up the practice ground up in-house to deliver that experience for our users.
Wow. So, what were some of the earliest challenges when you were first setting up that in-house practice that you remember that you came across?
I think one of the earliest challenges was, the value of testing in itself was not clearly established. Like, what does testing mean? While we are talking about, seamless experience for everyone everywhere, what does it mean? How do we test? Do we test for one city? Do we test at 100 plus cities? So we had to first establish what's the value of testing. So we established metrics like defect leakage. We established metrics like test coverage. We started aligning leadership teams across the board, top down, as well as aligning the teams within GSS. So that was one of the first things that we did, which is to define what success means in the context of a magical user experience. The next thing that we did was within our own organization, we had two different teams. One team was focused on largely centrally triaging bugs and minimizing noise that was going to engineering team. Another team was entirely focused on doing end-to-end testing. And these two teams were in two different organizations and operating in siloed manner. So we sort of felt that, bringing these two teams together under one bugs and testing integration strategy sort of is the right thing to do. So we did that. It took a while for the structure to sort of fully take shape, in that the bugs team was entirely focused only on bugs creation. They were not looking at it from an end-to-end lifecycle standpoint. Likewise, the testing team was purely focused on creating a test plan and a test cycle and a test strategy, but not really looking at defects leaking into production. So we had to bring these two teams together and sort of put together a structure with a vertical and a horizontal structure, where the horizontal team is focused on scaled operations, running repeatable playbooks, testing at scale, looking at bugs, and so on, while the vertical team is focused on ensuring the feature onboarding is proper, our experience from an engineering standpoint is seamless, the handshake happens logically, and so on and so forth. So I think there was an org change. There was a definition that we had to put together. There was a very clear success criteria that we had to define. And then that sort of helped us to move the needle forward in terms of, the mobile excellence.
Yeah. Would you say that organizational structure greatly contributes to, kind of this speed at which you're able to deliver and tackle the numerous releases that you're bringing to market on a weekly basis?
Absolutely. I think it's important to have everyone align on a common purpose and an objective. Like, you can't be testing features in isolation while you're not having that conversation with engineering on the comprehensiveness of those tests, right? There is no clear definition of the test plan and so on. So I think the structures make a huge difference, in that the end-to-end structure has to be seamless. Everyone signs up. There is a very clear objective that we are all aligned to. And then there is a very clear timeline in terms of delivering results. To me, I think those org structures really do matter to ensure that all of us are on the same page on what does mobile excellence mean? What does magical user experience for everyone everywhere means, right? And therefore, what does it translate to in terms of metrics? And how do we drive it collectively as a team to make it happen? I think that's the essence of when I say the org structure is super important.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of metrics, what KPIs does the organization use? What do you find most valuable for really assessing, performance and reliability, or even other internal KPIs and metrics that are used to kind of manage the overall effectiveness of the organization?
The two key KPIs that we look at it from a testing standpoint, if you were to ask me, is the first is the test coverage. How comprehensively am I testing the application across regions, across cities? Am I accounting for performance testing? Am I accounting for accessibility testing? Am I doing enough negative testing and so on? Right. So the first KPI that I generally look at is what's my functional test coverage when I test an application. Am I looking at every user journey, every mobile screen, every single feature, and the interplay of such features, and am I comprehensively testing those? I think that's first definition. The second definition that we are all aligned on is the defect leakage, the number of bugs or defects moving to production because we couldn't catch it in testing, right? Like, for example, you're trying to test a city card, a commercial city card being used in the US, but you're not testing for a card that is being used in South Korea where Uber has an operating marketplace, right? So stuff like that. Like, how do you test for regional nuances? So those are like, those do really matter in ensuring that the end experience doesn't take a hit because you've not tested it, right? So we've recently launched a program where we are comprehensively doing end-to-end of payments testing as well, right? We test for 9 different payment methods in 10 different countries, right? We test for Google Pay, Apple Pay. So how do we ensure, right, there is comprehensive test suite and there are success metrics that we are clearly testing for in every release cycle, and we deep dive into what the issues are as we run into challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. I feel like that is something that clearly had to evolve, over time. And you mentioned, sometimes bugs occasionally getting out into production. I'd love to ask about user feedback and how user feedback has influenced your approach to mobile quality, and also kind of those iterations of how you've changed your processes.
No, absolutely. I think initially, couple of years ago, we did listen into user feedback, but we didn't have a structured, robust program around listening into user feedback. So one of the first things that we did was to resurrect our the beta program, where we started providing white glove service to our top earners. We tried to put together a cohort of earners that we want to focus on. People who have spent enough time in the system, who have taken a good number of trips on the platform, who can definitely make time to deliver feedback to us on the mobile app experience. So we put together this cohort. We started sending invites out to them to have them sign up to the program. We looped in our legal team, our corporate communication team to make sure the messaging is consistent in terms of what are we attempting to do here. And then once the program was set up, we ensured that this cohort of users are getting first-class user experience when they report bugs. So what we did is, as soon as a bug is reported, we ensure that it's triaged to the relevant engineering team in less than 4 hours, right? What we also did is we look at specific screen names which could potentially contribute to most number of P0, P1 bugs and prioritize them first as compared to some of the lower priority bugs. We look at customer reported bugs to ensure those are prioritized first than an internal facing, user facing bug. We also ensured that we send regular status updates to people on how the feedback that has been submitted is being comprehensively used, right, month on month. So we look at what is the total number of bugs that have been submitted month on month, how many active beta users are on the platform, what is the validity rate of the bugs that are submitted. We also interestingly looked at features that were coming from this population, and we trashed it to the relevant product teams so that that can go into the product roadmap for Uber. So I think that's how we kept reinforcing our processes by listening into user feedback. And that's exactly why I said shifting left and bug discovery early on in the software development release cycle is going to be super important.
Yeah, yeah. As you were telling that story, you talked about how you had to work cross-functionally with corporate communications and legal and all of these other departments to set up a really effective program. I'd say, what advice would you give to other organizations, that are kind of squarely in the tech or testing or program operations about the importance of working cross-functionally and how to do it effectively, because not every one understands what you're talking about, right, on a technology level. So tell me a little bit about how you align people cross-functionally.
Yeah, I think my approach to aligning people cross-functionally is to focus on the user experience than tech. It doesn't matter what tech stack, what is the underlying tech stack that's powering the platform. But essentially, when I talk to my engineering teams or my product teams, my initial pitch is, hey, we are looking to create a friction-free experience for our users, right? And that's exactly what we've all aligned on at an org level. What does magical experience mean? So I think that keeping the narrative really simple, keeping the narrative that is resonating well with everyone, irrespective of the regions and teams they belong to. I think that really stands out. And then it's about translating that experience into objective metrics that each of these teams can contribute to, right? Like if you're talking about automation, right? In the context of mobile test automation, the KPIs that they had to focus on is the reliability of our mobile testing platform. How reliable is our mobile testing platform? Am I getting an instant feedback loop? Am I able to run my mobile test suite across 100 plus cities, right? When it comes to GSS, am I triaging bugs? Am I shifting left? Am I identifying patterns in bugs? Am I proactively adding test cases based on the bug trends that I'm identifying? Am I reducing defect leakage? Is there a clear test coverage definition? Those are my KPIs, right? So when it comes to a technical program management team, then they start breaking this down to how is my release cycle? How many hot fixes are coming in production? Am I able to fix it within time? So I think everyone is working towards one common goal, which is to create this frictionless experience and therefore translating that to specific KPIs for those individual teams and then cross collaborating is a magic that I sort of felt worked across the board when you work with different teams, right? Like you can't go and tell a marketing team about the underlying tech stack and the root cause analysis and what is it validation and deduplication and so on, right? I think the pitch there is, hey, I'm trying to create a friction-free experience. I want my app to behave seamlessly, intuitively, fast in every market where Uber operates. I think that's the background context, and therefore, it's important to set up this beta program to get first-hand feedback from our beta users and being able to action on the feedback, not just setting up the program, but also actioning on the feedback. I think that really stood out when we made the pitch.
Yeah. I think that is it is such great advice to shape that message to be about the magical user experience versus bugs, which somebody might not really understand or feel like inspired by, right? So while you were also talking, you mentioned a little bit about automation. I'd love to dig into that a little bit more around, what role does automation play in your testing strategy and how do you balance that with manual testing?
That's a great question, Gara. Automation plays a very, very significant role in improving efficiency, enabling faster feedback loops, and increasing the test coverage. Today, if you look at manual testing, one of the challenges that we run into is we do very limited runs of manual testing, which is not the case with automation. With automation, you can run testing across pipelines multiple times, even within a day. I think that's one. We have a very robust mobile and web automation framework today. We also have a lot of backend automation coverage where we look at API endpoints that these services communicate to. So if an endpoint goes down and the service is unable to communicate, then that can potentially lead to a lot of L4, L5 incidents. So we are constantly looking at automation as a key lever to ensure we have sufficient coverage. We run several tests within a short span of time across several cities, right? So that gives you the scale that you're looking for. However, having said that, while you have a robust automation strategy, it's also equally important to balance it with manual testing, because with manual testing, you have an edge where you can you sort of test for every edge case. You sort of test for every negative scenario. You sort of test for every regional events, right? Whereas in automation testing, it's more broad and shallow, whereas manual testing solves for a lot of edge case scenarios. So I think having that right balance is extremely important. And then you look to continuously shift left on both, right? You get to a point where when a software mobile engineer is attempting to place a diff, right, you're immediately blocking the diff if that code diff is leading to any kind of conflict in the larger app, right? I think that's where you've got to find the right balance between the mobile test automation, the web test automation, the backend integration testing, and the manual testing.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it sounds really incredible to have that view about, kind of broad and shallow versus like the depth in the edge cases. I feel like that is kind of a, advice or mantra that anyone can really use in their organization, especially if they're trying to make a business case to kind of invest in both methodologies. I was actually wanting to ask you a little bit about, some of the tools and technology that Uber's adopted for mobile testing, and how has that evolved over time?
In fact, in our very initial stages, we had a lot of manual operators running test cases on their personal devices when we started off testing. Like I have a device, and I
Yeah.
start running tests on the device, right? And this is the device that I use, and we used to track the results in spreadsheets, Google spreadsheets, and share results more broadly, which led to a lot of discrepancy. Gradually, what we did was we started investing in a fully functional device lab with simulators and 1,000+ devices across brands and OS versions. That's exactly where Kobiton comes in, right? Kobiton played a pretty significant role in terms of establishing our on-prem device lab. And today we are at a much better position in terms of some of those tools, processes, and technologies that we've been able to adopt to. We were able to quickly move to Jira T3 for project management. We today use Zephyr for case management, while also investing heavily on Google Data Studio for anything with respect to dashboarding of some of these results. I think with a greater understanding of the product, we also broke down the entire application into components and capabilities to essentially test every single block of the app. So look at the shift from mobile devices, spreadsheets to a Kobiton device lab at scale, 3,000+ devices, emulators, running test cases. We have automated dashboards now. We have innovative operating models. There's a test case management system and so on. So that's the shift that we are talking about over a period of time.
Even though it was over a period of time, it seems like you evolved really rapidly. How did you get that internal alignment to, have, finance approve investment in the technology, and also, investment in people, right? So that's something that I think a lot of quality organizations, struggle with is being a little bit under-resourced. So tell us how you overcame that.
So generally, what we do is we identify pain points that we want to be able to solve, right? Like for example, in the earlier conversation, I spoke of using Google spreadsheets and how we were manually tracking results using Google spreadsheets. We felt this was absolutely suboptimal, because if someone is not in office and we don't have access to the report that this individual has put together based on a test, we don't have access to what exactly happened. So we had to quickly move to a test case management platform, right? Likewise, for mobile devices, it was extremely hard for us to keep track of the number of physical devices and who we assign to, and the scale at which we are operating. And therefore, it made total sense to invest in a setup like an on-prem device lab in partnership with Kobiton, where we have so many different devices and versions that we could absolutely seamlessly test, irrespective of where we are in the world, right? I can be operating from home, from a remote office, or from my office location itself. The experience is super seamless. And the beauty of this entire setup is because a lot of my testers are today based in India, right? While we are doing a lot of on-road testing also globally, but we do a comprehensive testing out of India as well. And with the device lab being based in India, there's a lesser latency, there's a near real-time access. The entire experience is like pretty seamless, right? So I think it's extremely important to focus on what the pain points are, surface them to at the right level for budget investments. Likewise, when it comes to component and capabilities, we started doubling down on the test coverage definition that I spoke of at the very beginning in this conversation, right? So we started breaking down the application into various streams or surfaces. Then within each of those surfaces and screens, we started breaking down the application into capabilities and components. And that's where we started measuring objectively what does test coverage look like, right? So initially, it was a bit difficult to get a buy-in, but once we've established what is test coverage for a mobile release app objectively, and once we've aligned engineering teams across the board then and ran pilots to show results, right, and the end impact, it becomes so much more easier to scale these programs with other teams who have not volunteered initially for the pilots. I think that's a journey, slightly an iterative cycle, but you eventually get a buy-in when you have objective numbers to share and you have an end result that clearly shows that the experience has improved quite a bit. Like we are talking about a 99.5%, 99.8% uptime of our mobile release apps. And like, how do you make that happen, right? A year and a half ago, if I were to take a trip and in the midst of a trip, I'm trying to switch my ride or switch my payment method, an error pops up and the error says, oops, something went wrong. It doesn't tell me as a user, what do I have to do to get out of the situation, right? So we are testing for each of the scenarios today comprehensively and ensuring that the users need not have to think about the nature of the underlying issue, but instead focus on the experience, which is to click a button, book a ride, and get to the destination.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really incredible when you look at it through that lens, what you've been able to accomplish in in such a short time. So I'd say we're coming up to the end of our session. So I would love to hear some closing thoughts and perhaps some advice to any mobile testing organization that might be where Uber was 8 years ago or 5 years ago. What advice would you give them?
I would say a big disruption or adoption, if I may say so, that's sort of coming our way is the adoption of Gen AI for mobile testing. I see AI sort of playing a very key role in shaping the future of mobile testing, right? We ourselves attempted several pilots where you have a Gen AI model, we have our ERDs and PRDs on features. We just give that as an input to the model, and the model itself, helps write a test plan and a test, the strategic test plan for each of the features. It can design comprehensive test cases, which includes edge cases and negative cases. So I think a big adoption of AI as we do mobile testing at scale is something that I would advise the teams to look at as they are looking at mobile testing and the evolving scenario of mobile testing globally, especially with the advancements that are happening in the industry today. I think that's a clear call out. I think somewhere down the line, we are getting to a point where Gen AI looks like it can even analyze the code written by eng teams and make a call if it will impact the user experience in an adverse way, right? So this is really disrupting what we did, but in a positive way. So I think adoption of Gen AI, bringing Gen AI expertise as part of the SDLC development lifecycle, as part of your QA assurance process, it's going to make a huge difference. And I think that's something that I feel as teams adopt mobile testing strategies, if they could double down on, I think that will be hugely beneficial for everyone across the board.
I think that is excellent advice and hopefully actionable, and our audience will certainly take that to heart. So again, Nanda, it was an absolute pleasure getting to speak with you.